On today's episode of the Locked On Fantasy Podcast, we'll be taking a look at a little Who Would You Rather. And with two of the biggest blue liners in the game, we'll be feeding you our best bets of the night and, of course, our DFS selections, as always.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
If that music doesn't get you fired up, I don't know what will. This is episode 10 of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Welcome back. I am always happy to be here with my boy Steele Roden. I'm Flip Livingstone. Thank you for being here with us. You can find us across all platforms, including Spotify and Apple Music, as well as YouTube, all for free. Make sure you hammer that subscribe button, hammer the like button. We really appreciate the support. On today's episode, we will be looking at our best bets of the night, as always, for Wednesday's board. We're going to be talking a little Who Would You Rather with two of the biggest blue liners in the fantasy game. Steele's going to be doing his thing with the DFS picks for Wednesday's slate. But we're going to kick off the show, Steele, by a little bit of injury news to one of the biggest names in the game. The book is out a little bit in terms of how long he's going to be out, but I think we just need to kick off the show quickly by talking about an injury to Austin Matthews, who went down the other night with a knee to the back of the head and didn't look like he was in too good of a shape.
Yeah, I think the scary thing was that for me was that it really reminded me of what happened to John Tavares in the first game against the Montreal Canadiens, getting that knee to the front of his face as well, out for an extended period of time. So definitely high speed with the John Tavares situation. It's very scary getting hit with the knee or any time to the back of the head because it is a different situation. We've seen it plenty of times in fights in the NHL, fights in the UFC. Getting hit in the back of the head is not a good sign for the person that's getting struck there. So it's a very scary thing for Austin Matthews. It has come out that, he is feeling pretty good today. He's going to get a couple of days of rest because he didn't have much time to rest over the weekend for the NHL All-Star game and skills competition. So it is great news that he is feeling a little bit better today. Should get a couple of days of rest, and we'll kind of see what happens in the next couple of days and where he's at with that.
Yeah, when it comes to number 34 on the Toronto Maple Leafs, whatever really happens with him, we got to talk about it a little bit. He makes the Maple Leafs tick. He's one of the biggest names in the game right now. And it's just a scary looking play. Hope nothing but the best. We should hear something soon in the next couple of days in terms of if and when he will be out for. But it's something to definitely keep your eye on in terms of fantasy, because that will be a big hole to fill if he is out for any prolonged period of time. But that is that. And what I would like to move on to now, Steele, is one of the things that we're going to be getting into a little bit on regular, I would say. And I think I got to give you your props for coming up with this angle. We're going to do a little bit of a Who You Rather with some of the biggest names at each position. Today, Steele, we're going to be looking at two blue liners, two guys who have been having great seasons and who have been producing fantasy numbers, the kind that you want in terms of being at the top of your league. We're going to be looking at Kris Letang and Jacob Trouba today, Steele. And in terms of Who Would You Rather, let me hear your thought process here, pal. What are you thinking when it comes to these two guys who are having great seasons?
Yeah, well, first of all, two absolute incredible defensemen for their hockey clubs. The Pittsburgh Penguins and New York Rangers. But I like this idea because we're able to talk about, who would you rather? We're able to get into a debate about it, but it also is a look ahead for maybe next season, next fantasy season as well. Like, who should I draft earlier rather than later? If the opportunity comes to it, should I pick Trouba or Letang? Should I pick this guy or the other guy? So I like the fact that we're going to dive into these conversations a little bit more. But for me, I have to go with Jacob Trouba here instead of Kris Letang. And it's a very, I think a lot of people would go with Kris Letang, but I think for the fact of when you're taking into consideration banger leagues, you're taking into consideration penalty minutes, if that is a category in your fantasy league, that Jacob Trouba is just a far better player to pick than a guy like Kris Letang for that matter. Even with those categories not being in your fantasy league, they're pretty much they're exactly dead even in fantasy points this season. 473 fantasy points in Yahoo League. So
Mhm.
for me, looking at the differences of their game styles, looking at the similarities as well, I would have to go with a guy like Jacob Trouba. I like the fact, like I've mentioned this so many times before with the New York Rangers, they have big physical guys. Trouba is one of those guys who has elevated his game over the last couple of seasons with the New York Rangers since being dealt from the Winnipeg Jets.
I'm surprised you don't have full-blown Rangers attire on these days, Steele. You're absolutely loving the blue shirts for good reason, though. Like, as much as I'm chirping, there's a lot to like about that team. Jacob Trouba has had a breakout season. He checks all the fantasy boxes. I seem to talk about that a lot in terms of guys who kind of do it all. This year, he's really started to chip in offensively as well with 8 goals and 16 assists. But he does a little bit of everything. And I want to give him credit before, siding against you and going with a guy like Letang, but I do want to give him his credit. He also sits 13th in the NHL with hits. So he throws the body, he blocks shots, like you said, the banger leagues, Jacob Trouba is your guy. So I think what's important to really look at this with is the caveat of what is your dynasty? Is it a dynasty league? Is it a keeper league? Is it so you're just a one-off? What is your league organized by categorically or positionally, whatever? That always matters. So I think we're just looking this at a 1 year, year-to-year lens, not so much a dynasty, because I think the clear pick would be Trouba due to his age and just his durability. He has a lot more in the tank than I think a guy like Letang, who at 34 years old, his better days are behind him. So with that said, however, for a push this year, for a push to this year's final, I'm going with a guy like Letang. He's tied for the 6th most assists in the league this year with 36, chips in 5 goals. He's almost a point per game player, 6-time All-Star, perennial 40, 50-point guy, and just the track record is there. You know what you're going to get with Letang. I've talked about this before. You can make the argument both ways here. I really don't think there's, a wrong way to go per se. But for me, in terms of what you can count on, I'm going with Letang. And lastly, I'll finish with this, is I talked about the window for closing with Pittsburgh before. And I really do see this team making a big push at the deadline. We're talking deadline. I could see them making a move that really kind of puts them over the top. And I think that move comes on the blue line. So if that means more production, more offensive, minutes and things like that from Letang, I think that also could be huge. Also, he's playing with Sid and Gino. So when I'm looking at this from an offensive, surely just push yourself over the top for this last fantasy stretch, I'm going to go with a guy like Letang.
Yeah, and the thing about Letang is year in, year out, he's going to get more points than a guy like Jacob Trouba. Like, Letang has 41 points in 42 games this season. Trouba's got 24 points in 47 games. It's not the type of game that Trouba plays. He's not the offensive defensive player like Kris Letang has been for the Pittsburgh Penguins. But like I mentioned, like this guy puts up a ton of stats in the other categories. And I feel like a lot of people undervalue those stats when drafting players, when, thinking about who should I trade for in, at the very beginning of the season, midway through the season, towards the playoffs as well. So I feel like a lot of people underrate those categories before drafting their players. And Jacob Trouba brings a lot to the table with those shots, with the blocks, with the hits. He's got 100 plus shot. He's got 100 plus in all 3 of those categories for that fact. So for me, the fact that Letang has averaged 3 more minutes this season on ice time, as well has 20 more points than him, and they're tied in fantasy points, that to me just shows how much Jacob Trouba is that type of player that can really set your team over the top. And the fact that, again, we were talking about, potential trades this offseason. I think the New York Rangers are going to go all in as well with the Pittsburgh Penguins. Probably get some help on the back end that can really help Jacob Trouba as well.
The last point I'll say on this is I did a little bit of research into the ease of schedule for the Pittsburgh Penguins, and they sit at the top of the list on a couple of different projection sites in terms of ease of schedule against some really weak teams. I believe there's 4 games against the Sabres, 2 or 3 against the Ottawa Senators. So that's one of the angles and reasons why I took Letang, because that ease of schedule could be, one of those big points down the stretch. But one of the big points that I want to talk about right now is Built Bars. They're covered in 100% real chocolate. I'm not kidding around here. 100% real chocolate. You know my boy Steele. He loves himself some chocolate. He loves himself some Built Bars. That's what we're all about right now. Low calorie, high protein. Replace your candy bars with Built Bars. They're just better. A typical candy bar can actually run you 200 to 300 calories, and ain't nobody got time for that. Most Built Bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and only 4 net carbs. Like, come on now. Compare that to that candy bar I was talking about. That's usually 240 calories minimum, 30 grams of sugar. Come on now. It's 2022, and it's time to get healthy. They have all kinds of delicious flavors: mint brownie, coconut almond, and new for this month, and I know Steele is excited about this one, white chocolate cookies and cream. They are deep dish. They're coming out with new flavors all the time, and if you think they have a good flavor, they'll be making it. At Built Bar, it's all about the taste. Go to BuiltBar.com, use the promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off. Like Steele likes to say, let me repeat that for you one more time so you do not miss it. Go to built.com, not .ca. Use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off. Thanks again so much for making Locked On Fantasy your first listen every single day. We really appreciate it. We're out there across all platforms, so make sure you hit that subscribe button and show us some love. We are always appreciative of the feedback. But make sure to check out the Olympic Hockey Daily presented by Locked On NHL. It's a bonus podcast covering all the action in Beijing. You can find it on the Locked On NHL podcast feed. And just like us, it's free and available everywhere you get your podcasts. Steele, we're rolling, brother. This is episode 10. I really do appreciate all the support and love that we've gotten over the last little while. You know, we're new to this game in terms of the Locked On Fantasy, and, you know, we're getting some love here, and we appreciate it. Thank you for being along for this ride. But just know we are just getting warmed up. There is a lot more awesome content coming your way. Steele and I are in the lab daily. Speaking of which, Steele, this is your go-to segment, brother, DFS. What are we talking about tonight? How are we feeding the people some coin?
Hey, yeah, we try to help the people out there as much as possible. We love the fact that you've been messaging us on Twitter. You know, we love being able to help you out with anything that's going on with your fantasy league, whether it's a trade, whether it's DFS situations as well. So thank you again, like Flip has mentioned, that we really do appreciate it, and always reach out to us if you want. Mm-hmm. Again, this is where I run things. This is the DFS segment, Flip. I try to give everyone the best solutions for the DFS selections here. And, you know, looking at Wednesday night, I'm not going to lie, it was really tough to pick out which games I really liked, because I was looking at it. You know, the Philadelphia Flyers, Detroit Red Wings game could be very juicy. There could be there either could be a lot of goals in that game, or it could just be very, you know, sloppy as well. So I
think that's fair though, Steele. Let the people know. If you're not feeling it, bro, you know, you got your eyes on this. If it's tough sledding, I want to know too. So I appreciate that. And I think I totally agree with you, but I'm interested to see what you did come up with here.
Yeah, there was definitely a couple of weird matchups when, you know, looking through the schedule Wednesday night. Like, I wanted to really dive into the Vancouver game, but looking at the players, you know, we've talked about how Elias Pettersson's been struggling of recently. So I wanted to go with a guy like him, but, you know, the last 4 games, he's got 0 points, 1 shot in each game. It was very confusing for me at first, but I did land on 2 games here. The first one being the Nashville Predators versus the Dallas Stars. And I think this one is probably the best matchup of the night. Okay. You know, getting a Central Division rivalry going at it again. And, you know, I think you can obviously find star players on the top lines for each of these teams. You know, obviously on the Nashville Predators, Mikael Granlund, Philip Forsberg, Ryan Johansson as well. You know, you can obviously find some value there as looking down at the bottom 6 forwards, Tanner Jeannot and Luke Kunin. Those guys are definitely going to be value guys who you can probably find them in the price range of, you know, 3,500 to 4,000. I would probably say maybe a little bit less. It all depends on where they're stuck in the lineup for the Nashville Predators. But then even with the Dallas Stars, the top line has been absolutely rolling. Joe Pavelski, Rupe Hintz, and Jacob Robertson. My bad for forgetting his name there a little bit. They have so many Jacobs on their team, but okay. Jacob Robertson has been absolutely fantastic for them. So a lot of superstar players in this matchup right here. There's also guys you can find up and down the lineup to help you as well. And then Yeah, I really like this matchup. I feel like because, it is their first game, I believe, of the second half of the season, it could be a really big matchup. A lot of goals scored, as well as UC
Mhm.
Saros is a great goaltender. You should pick him up on the back end to help you in the crease.
Yeah, it's funny that we always do this because I think we kind of look at games a lot of the same way, which is kind of fun. But I want to be talking about this game for my picks in a few minutes here. But I think that you mentioned a really sneaky player there in Tanner Jeannot, the rookie, who's had a really great season. And I would be looking at a guy like that who obviously, as a rookie in the first half, played out of his shoes. Little bit of a couple of stories out there, that might not actually be that good. So maybe he's reading into these headlines that much, and I could expect a big second half out of him. I like the Nashville Predators a lot in general, so I would lean that way. Also, because the Dallas Stars have been inconsistent this season in their own end. DFS wise, though, you're not wrong. But I would definitely look down the lineup on Nashville a little bit too, because their depth guys always find a way to score somehow.
Yeah, that's why it really stuck out to me, is because you can find a lot of great value there in this matchup. But
Mm-hmm.
the second matchup I had that you can also find some great value is the Vegas Golden Knights game versus the Calgary Flames. I just saw a video. Jack Eichel is practicing in a contact jersey, but he
Jeez.
will not be back for this game. So unfortunately, I stayed away from the Vegas Golden Knights players, even though they do have a lot of great players out there. You really hyped up the Calgary Flames the last time we spoke about some of their value picks. So I really had to look at their lineup and, oh, wow, man, I really like the way they have, kind of shifted things up and down their lineup. Sean Monahan has bounced around a lot frequently, trying to get his game going for the Calgary Flames. You mentioned Blake Coleman a couple of episodes ago. Yeah, your boy. That's who actually I went with in this DFS thing right here.
Let's go.
I like you hyped him up so much, and I really looked into it, and I love what you had to say about him. Yeah, you want to be my lawyer? That'd be great. I might need one. Who knows?
Yeah.
But the Calgary Flames are rolling as of recently. They're on a 3-game win streak. They have found themselves kind of slipping down the standings in their division. So going up against a division team as well, the Vegas Golden Knights, on the road, playing their second game of a back-to-back after the weekend of the NHL All-Star Weekend. I'm not really sure how it's going to pan out for them, especially in their second game of a back-to-back. So that's why I'm going with the Calgary Flame players here. And then, like I mentioned, you can find a lot of great value up and down this lineup. Dylan Dube, Andrew Mangiapane, Coleman, Blake Coleman, like we mentioned, as well as Jakob Markstrom in net. Obviously, you can either go with Jakob Markstrom or UC Saros, who I have suggested because of how great they've played this entire season. But just for the fact that it was the All-Star weekend this past weekend, I have to stay away from the Vegas Golden Knights.
So you're saying that the Mens were out on the strip a little aggressive, getting into a couple of free drinky poos. The free tickets were go flowing. They were.
But if you saw the introductions for, each player from each division, a lot of them looked a little bit hungover there. So I'm not really, because it was in Las Vegas, I think they took a little bit more of a beating than the other players on the other team. So, we'll definitely see.
I like this angle though, Steele. Yeah. We should be looking into more hangover type trends. I'm really feeling this angle, but I like in all seriousness, I think the Flames are a good group to look at in net, up front for sure. Blake Coleman, this is the Blake Coleman club now. He's probably very fairly priced. Look at a guy like that to chip in on the offensive front. And I like what you're doing here, Steele.
Yeah, so those would definitely be my suggestions for Wednesday's DFS selections. I just think those two matchups are the best matchups. Obviously, you can look at games like the Blackhawks versus Oilers, Seattle Kraken versus Arizona Coyotes. You can always find some great underpriced value in those games because of how bad those teams are. But again, those are the two matchups that really stuck out to me for my DFS selections. And I can't wait to hear what your big time bets are, because you did mention the Nashville Predators. But for betting, BetOnline has you covered this season with more props and odds and lines than ever before as football continues into March through the playoffs and right into the Super Bowl this upcoming weekend. But it's not just football. BetOnline has up to the minute info on pro and college hoops, NHL, boxing, UFC, along with live real-time updates of current games. Remember, BetOnline, it's where the game starts. Thank you for making Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every day. Don't forget, we are free and available on all platforms. That also includes YouTube. So make sure to subscribe and follow to the channel. Flip and I always appreciate the support. Thank you so much for, obviously messaging us on Twitter and leaving some comments on the YouTube videos. Again, we always like to hear back from the supporters out there. So thank you again for that so much. That being said, we just mentioned BetOnline, all the props there for you. It is now time for Flip's favorite segment of the day, Big Time Bets with Flip and Steele. And Flip, I really do want to hear what you have for that Nashville Predators Dallas Stars matchup.
Let's dive right into it, Steele. I am a little bit of a degenerate gambler, if you all haven't been able to tell by now. So trust me when I say I spend far too much time reading into this stuff. I'm doing my best here. Steele's, putting me to shame a little bit with his record. He's something like 17-8. So trust me, you want to be following us along. Our handles are under the bar there. Make sure you hit us up on Twitter. Steele Roden, Flip Livingstone. We're always tweeting out our picks. We're tweeting out our thoughts. So make sure you hit us up on there. But I'm going to dive right into it, Steele. You want to know what I'm feeling for the Pred Stars game? I'm going to hit you right off the top. The Nashville Predators are one of the best road teams in the league. And I love this position for a big Central Division showdown. I initially was looking at the under here, under 6. I could see this being a close, low-scoring game. We weren't so correct with a 4-goal game in the Leafs the other night, but that's okay. We're moving on. We still have winners to feed you guys. Nashville I've talked about them a little bit. They are one of those teams that still don't get enough love for being a balanced, tough to play against team. Example, their special teams is sensational. They are tied for 6th in power play efficiency. They are tied for 9th in penalty killing, and they are downright hard to play against night in and night out. They also have an awesome track record against Dallas, winning 6 of their last 7, including 3 in a row. And I'd also like to point out that Nashville is 2nd in the Western Conference, only 8 points behind the juggernaut of the Colorado Avalanche. So I think it's time to start giving this Nashville team some props. Dedicated hockey fan, shout out to my boy Daw, is a diehard Nashville Predators fan. I don't know what he's been smoking lately, but he is on to something because this Nashville team is going to be a force to be reckoned with. They're not a team you want in the first round. I like them a lot tonight in Dallas. Dallas has been inconsistent the whole season, and I like the recent track record of the Predators. I'm going to stop talking about this. Predators money line plus 101 is my first pick of the night. Lock it in, Steele.
Lock it in, baby. I like that pick a lot. I will correct you real quick. I am actually 19-9 with my overall record this season. It has improved just a little bit from Monday night, but we'll leave it at that. We'll continue with, we'll talk a little bit more about the side bets and the one that I just won on you on Monday night. But sticking with that Nashville-Dallas game, I do like everything you had to suggest there. I'm not going to take them on the money line because for me, I just never know what really happens, but I do like the odds there. But that's also why I took the Predators and Stars over 6 goals at plus 100. Like I mentioned, I think this could be a really high scoring game. Okay. We did talk about the other night about how the Maple Leafs and the Canes, it might be a 3-2 game under 6 goals and ended up improving to 6.5. And that ended up failing both of us. So
now you're jaded. You're rattled.
I'm rattled. So I'm going with the over 6 goals at plus 100. I like the odds there. Again, like we've mentioned, the two top lines for the Nashville Predators and Dallas Stars have just been absolutely insane for the team this year. So I think it could be a really high scoring game, as well as the goaltending for the Dallas Stars has not been very great this entire season. So
good point.
I like the over there on the 6 goals at plus 100. My second bet of the night is the Seattle Kraken puck line at plus 115 versus the Arizona Coyotes.
Wow. Puck line for the Kraken. Okay. I was actually looking at that game as potentially one that I could see it being like 5-4 or something like that, because as much as, they don't exactly boast offensive talent, neither of those teams that can play a lick of defense, and the goaltending has just been, aside from Grubauer being decent, the goaltending in Arizona has been atrocious.
Yeah.
I don't hate that pick. I think that is one of those games that I looked at and you kind of like chuck a hand grenade in it and just hope people come out alive. Good luck to you, sir. I don't hate the angle for the Kraken at home. That's going to be a juicy odd. So if you're looking at it from that perspective, sprinkle a little bit on it. I'm looking to, you mentioned the Philadelphia Flyers Detroit Red Wings game. I always look at recent trends, track records. It doesn't mean always everything, but I like to know, is a team struggle when they go into a certain barn? Case in point, Wells Fargo Center in Philadelphia has been an absolute house of horrors for the Detroit Red Wings, to the tune of 16 out of 17 losses in their last 17 trips to Philadelphia. I know those are over the last decade and the teams change and it's different, but Philly is also 8-0-2 in their most recent 10 overall. They own the Detroit Red Wings. I like Philly in their first game back from the All-Star break to really try and turn the page, because that first half was atrocious. Don't get me wrong. We've given our love to the Detroit Red Wings. They have some pieces coming back, and I do like what's happening there. But in this situation, I like the struggles to continue for the Detroit Red Wings in Philadelphia. You cannot ignore that recent track record. Philly owns them. They like seeing red and white coming down the ice. I don't know what it is. They like pizza. I don't know what it is, but Philly on the money line, -104 at home for a big bounce back start to the second half. I like the situation. I like the track record, and I like the odds. So give me the Flyers money line -104.
I like your angle there too. And hopefully Claude Giroux can continue with that skill he had in that All-Star game. He had an absolute beauty goal in that first game matchup. So
yes, sir.
I like the Philadelphia Flyers there. You did, prove it right there with the track record against the Detroit Red Wings. And I'm also going with the track record here, and it's the Calgary Flames money line at -130. I already hyped them up in the DFS segment.
Yep.
Like I already mentioned, Vegas is on the road playing the second game of a back-to-back. I just don't really feel like they'll have it in them to get this dub, especially with a Calgary Flames team that has been really, really great this season. Jakob Markstrom's been absolutely outstanding. So I think that's the easy one for me. Calgary Flames money line -130.
Steele, can I confirm which is your lock of the night, sir? The people need to know.
Lock of the night is the Predators versus Stars over 6 goals at +100. I do really feel in my gut, that this is going to be over 6 goals.
I hope you're right. I had it originally written down as an under pick. So I'm putting out the good juju there for you. I want to wrap this up because we're getting a little long in the tooth here. So I'm going to feed you my lock of the night real quick. This worked for me the last time these two faced off. Chicago Blackhawks at Edmonton Oilers, over 6.5 total goals. I could see this being another shootout style game. 6 of the last 7 between these two clubs has gone over the number. Those 7 games have produced a total of 53 goals.
Jeez.
They get together, a lot of goals are scored. Koskinen, who's, been the lesser of 3 evils in Edmonton, somehow he's been the most solid goalie. He's out with COVID. So you're going to have to go with Cuckoo Mike Smith, it looks like. He's good for at least 1 or 2 meltdowns, at least 1 or 2 crappers. The rumors are also swirling around Flower in the cage for the Chicago Blackhawks, where he could go. He's not been great of late, allowing 11 goals against in 3 straight losses. You can see why I'm liking the over here. I think this is an easy one, slam dunk, lock of the night, over 6.5 in the Chicago Blackhawks Edmonton Oilers game, and you can pencil that one in.
Well, you heard it here, folks. Both of us, Flip and Steele, taking the over in the Edmonton and Chicago game, as well as the over in the Dallas versus Nashville game as well. So both penciling in the overs here. It's going to be a high-scoring affair, I guess, Wednesday night. So we both have that as the lock of the night. Thank you for making Locked On Fantasy Hockey your first listen every day. If you want more gambling advice and what you should pick every day, make your second listen Locked On Bets, your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q, with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. It's free and available on all platforms, just like this podcast right here. So make sure you follow on your favorite podcast right now or subscribe on the YouTube channel, and you'll get the latest episodes of Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast as soon as it's available every day, which is pretty much 7 a.m. in the morning every single day. So make sure you're tuning on your way to work, listening to it on your way to work in the car. Make sure you check out the YouTube channel as well as the Twitter handle that we just mentioned as well. Leave some comments, message us on Twitter. We'll always try to help you out with any questions that you have for your fantasy team or fantasy league. Thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. Have a great day. Good luck with all your bets tonight. Make sure you lock in those bets with our lock of the night bets, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow night.